Travis went good, so the major prophecy for the Jews comes from the Torah book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verses 18 through 19, or 15 through 19. And it says, the Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him he shall hearken.
Oh, okay. You're right.
And
I've been so
as all other prophets, all other scriptures, therefore they write in accordance with this prophecy. And so the name Jesus comes from Jeremiah chapter 23, and we'll start in verse 5. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David. So you see the pattern is similar to Deuteronomy. So Jeremiah is referring to the prophecy and now is adding to it that he's going to be a descendant of King David. And in verse 6, in his days Judah shall be saved. This is where Jesus comes from, as Yah of salvation is the meaning of Jesus from the Hebrew. And so the Savior comes from Jeremiah's prophecy with the additional information. And so he's a man like Moses, again, as he says, no more will people talk about Moses, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but Yahweh lives the man like Moses, who brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country and from all countries whither I have driven them. The man like Moses, who is patterned exactly like Moses, with the confrontation with Pharaoh, with the Exodus. And so this is where the Gospels gets their information from, is using the name Jesus for this purpose. As Matthew even quotes Isaiah that his name is supposed to be Emmanuel, and yet nonetheless calls him Jesus because of the information in Jeremiah. As you see that the first chapter is about the descendancy from King David. It's because of Jeremiah. Even though Jesus doesn't come from King David in that listing, Joseph does. And so there's a reason why you have the book of Jesus following Deuteronomy, as it is not literal history. Archaeologists have confirmed and established as fact that this did not happen. The places did exist for the most part, but they did not fall in the order that they fell, according to the archaeological record. And Jericho, for example, had fallen multiple times, but in way different periods of history than could be allowed for the time frame of this book. Thus, this too is apocalyptic literature of the Jews, referring to the prophecy of Jeremiah of a man like Moses, calling his name Jesus. And he's a man like Moses because let's find the chapter. Yep. He parts the water of the river Jordan, just as Moses parted the waters of the Reed Sea. And so, no, it's not the Red Sea, it's the Reed Sea, and there's a reason why it's Reed Sea and not Red Sea. because it's not literal history. It's apocalyptic literature, which means there's a symbolic meaning behind a reed sea having to do with the afterlife. And so, yeah, in Jesus chapter 3, Jesus leads Israel to Jordan as he parts the waters of the Reed Sea, or the Jordan River this time, and they pass through on dry land, just as Moses did. He's the man like Moses. And that's what this book was written for. Not to be a literal history, but to be apocalyptic literature, fulfilling the prophecies, or adding to the prophecies through another text. And here he's a military leader, whereas in the gospel narratives that have been turned literal history but are apocalyptic literature, the Jesus is more of a healer during his ministry of 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, when the Exodus was supposed to occur. And then the second harvest was just the other. It's come and gone now. You missed it. So you've missed both Exoduses. So what does that say for Mormons? But anyway, regardless, this concept of military Jesus comes from another story giving a different variation of the same prophecy in the book of Revelation by John in chapter 19, where Jesus, because it's apocalyptic literature and so it's not real Jesus, he's using Jeremiah as his source for this. And and he sees the sign in the heavens of the white horse, and he that sat thereon is Jesus. And so Jesus here is a military leader, just like in the book of Jesus after Deuteronomy in the Old Testament. And so then when you learn astronomy, or if you obtain a stellariumprogram.org, stellarium.org, you can use your Urim and Thummim to identify that John is giving the dates for the latter days, despite Matthew's redactor writing in that no man knows the day or the hour. We do know the day and the hour, 23rd September 2017. Thus 2017 is the first year of the latter days, the start of his ministry. And Revelation 19, with the angel standing in the sun on the back of the white horse, is 8 April 2024. That's the end of the latter days, the birth and the death sign of the Christ, as a sign in the signs in the heavens. And so when Joseph Smith has to correct Mormons that he's not Christian and that Jesus is not his Christ, in fact Constantine's Jesus is an abomination, he then goes on to tell us who our Christ is, and quotes indirectly the Deuteronomic passage, and does clarify that that prophet is Christ. And so you now have to interpret Joseph Smith according to this learning of the Jews. You cannot replace Joseph Smith with Christianity. You cannot replace Emmanuel with Jesus. Because if you say Jesus, you need to understand that you're referring to the prophecy of Jeremiah, but that's not his name. That's just, he's a savior. It's more of a title. And so Joseph Smith goes on to clarify even more than the book of Jesus or Jeremiah by, went too far, by giving us this prophecy. In regards to the redemption of Zion, verse 16 of section 103. Therefore I will raise up unto my people. That's the Deuteronomy passage. Hold on. And so he quotes from Deuteronomy that he's already told us in the Joseph Smith history in 1838 is the Mormon Christ. And he says, unto my people, unto Mormons. This is a mortal man that he's talking about. Or shall we say, a son of man, as Jesus keeps referring to in Matthew chapter 24, in the Apocalypse of Matthew, Apocalypse of Mark, Apocalypse of Luke, Apocalypse of John, assuming they all have the similar thing, but Matthew specifically, with 24 and 25. Those are the Apocalypse of Matthew. As I did the video about the Gospel and Apocalypse of Peter, which was rejected from the New Testament, which I don't understand why, other than they purposely didn't want Christians to understand this Jewish concept of Christ. And here he is again confirmed as a man like Moses, who shall lead them like as Moses led the children of Israel. And this again is repeated in the Book of Mormon as well, as 2 Nephi chapter 3, Lehi giving the blessing to his son Joseph. It talks of Joseph Smith in the future having the name of his father, and uses seer instead of prophet, but refers to Joseph as he shall be great, like unto the man like Moses, whom I have said I would raise up unto you to deliver my people, the house of Israel. And as a man like Moses, the Moses who was raised up to deliver the house of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So verses 9 and 10 are the three different people, Joseph Smith being included. And so because Joseph Smith also is a man like Moses, Joseph Smith, in saying that the man like Moses is our Christ, Joseph Smith likewise becomes our Christ. And of course that's blasphemy to Christians, because Jesus is the only Christ that has ever existed, despite the scriptures telling us otherwise. But they don't recognize it because of the blindness that they've been given by Constantine. And so, yeah, this is Mormon doctrine concerning the Christ. And this is why you have the confusion over Jesus, because you all know that Jesus is the one who appears in the equivalent passage of Revelation chapter 19. You know it as 3 Nephi chapter 11. Now it came to pass that there was a great multitude gathered together of the people of Nephi round about the temple, which was in the land Bountiful, and they were marveling and wondering one with another, and were showing one to another the great and marvelous changes which had taken place. And they were also conversing about this Jesus Christ, of whom the sign had been given concerning his death. Revelation 19. And so in verse 8, they see a man descending out of heaven. That's the sign in the heavens on 8 April 2024. And of course the church says no. This is all literal history. It's all true as literal history. There is no learning of the Jews, because if you hadn't noticed, in 1 Nephi 1 verse 2, there's no footnote for learning of the Jews. They don't want you to know what the learning of the Jews are. They don't want you to know from 2 Nephi chapter 25 verse 1 that the manner of writing is prophecy of apocalyptic literature. And so thus the Book of Mormon is not literal history, but is written in apocalyptic literature style. And so 1 Nephi, chapter 1, 2017, according to the sign in the heavens that Lehi has, which is the same exact sign in Revelation chapter 12, 23rd September 2017. And then here, 8 April 2024. The Book of Mormon likewise telling us for our specific day. Now, our day in the terms of a general sense of everybody from Joseph Smith to future generations' day. It's our specific day, because it's 2022 and about to turn 2023, which is 1 year before 2024, which is the end of the latter days. And so, yes, all of the prophecies fit within this time frame, because this is the time frame of the ministry. And you guys missed the Exodus. It was prophesied to happen. And so I guess you guys are going to turn into pillars of the Great Salt Lake, just like Lot's wife. You guys made your choice. Don't get angry at me. You chose not to hearken to your Christ, because you instead believed in idol God Jesus. And Joseph Smith warned you about that in the Doctrine and Covenants section 1, verse 16. So, yeah. There's too much contention, too many problems when you replace the Jews. And there's a reason why there's an increase in anti-Semitism right now. It's because the prophecies of the Jews are coming to pass. And it's upsetting the anti-Semitics.